Thank you, Patrick. And it really is an honor today to be able to introduce our speaker. Dr. Christie Canaria is the Interagency Policy Specialist at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, otherwise known as NIST. And prior to joining NIST, Dr. Canaria led the I-Corps at the National Institutes of Health, or the NIH, a program designed to support training to help project teams at NIH-funded small businesses overcome key obstacles along the path of innovation and commercialization. She was also a program director at the National Cancer Institute's Small Business Innovation Research and Development Center, supporting a portfolio of technologies including biological imaging, biosensors, and nanotechnology. Prior to federal service, Dr. Canaria managed an optical microscopy facility at the Department of Energy's Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory and served as an imaging expert at the Caltech Biological Imaging Center, where she developed multidimensional and time-lapse confocal imaging techniques. Dr. Canaria also worked at biotech company Illumina Inc. during its startup and IPO stages. Additionally, Dr. Canaria was awarded the AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship and began science policy work in Washington, D.C. in 2013. Dr. Canaria holds a PhD in chemistry from the California Institute of Technology and a BS in chemistry from the University of California, San Diego. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Christie Canaria to the stage.
Having me here, and thank you to the organizers for this opportunity to speak with you. I hope that this will be an engaging session for you while you continue to work your way through lunch. For myself, I will be abstaining from eating because, as I mentioned to some of the organizers, all that blood rushing from my brain to my stomach may not mean me lasting very long up here. But what I wanted to do was also say this is my first time at the ISSRDC conference. And I arrived yesterday in time to see the panel with the investment speakers, as well as the networking session last night. And let me just say, I was struck in a big way, in a good way, at the community that I've seen assembled here at this conference. So this is my big thank you to you, my fellow conference attendees, for engaging with me last night as I made my way around the exhibit hall. I had a really fun time learning about what you're doing and your stories and your interests. And so that kind of energy that you bring here, that kind of engagement and excitement for new opportunities coming forward, that's the same kind of energy that's going to push the boundaries of research, technology, and innovation into the new spaces. And that's the kind of energy that I want to help pull in as we talk about a new program, the Chips for America program. And what I'm really excited to do is share with you today the vision that we at NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, and with the Department of Commerce, that vision for Chips for America. And I'm pleasantly surprised with how many of you last night were familiar with CHIPS, but if I could just get a quick hands up, how many of you here at lunch have heard about Chips for America? Okay, that's a really good showing. I'm glad to hear that. And of course, I'm sure you have different reasons for why you're deeply interested in the Chips for America program. But even if this is the first time you're hearing about CHIPS, I think all of us here understand that the semiconductor industry is integral, not just in launching satellites or running space stations, but in our daily lives and also for national and economic security. And so for America to really compete globally in the 21st century, we need to strengthen semiconductor manufacturing on our shores and extend our leadership in semiconductor research and innovation. So enter Chips for America. Now, almost a year ago, now, August 2022, the CHIPS Act was signed into law, appropriated with funds, and since then we've been working to build programs that bring us closer to our vision of economic security, national security, and future innovation. By establishing CHIPS production here at home, we help to protect our economic and national security against disruptions out of our control. The CHIPS Act also recognizes that we need to develop the technical expertise, capabilities, and workforce that will ensure U.S. leadership in semiconductors for many years to come. And so with that program, we have so many more things to share with you. In this slide, I want to sort of share how the CHIPS program has been appropriated through law that resulted in two major programs being thrust forward. One of them is the semiconductor manufacturing that NIST under Department of Commerce is implementing, a $39 billion manufacturing incentives program, and a series of programs to grow the microelectronics and semiconductor R&D program, this $11 billion for our R&D. I'll speak about both of these two programs, but really the strategy that we've built around CHIPS has been informed by extensive engagement with you, the semiconductor industry leaders in our spaces, experts in academia, nonprofits, public-private entities, national labs, to help decide where and how we can best leverage these dollars to move technology and innovation forward. And underlying all of this really is a focus on the workforce as a priority for all of CHIPS for America. So for those of you who are familiar with the CHIPS program right now, you might be wondering, well, how do I engage with these $52 billion of appropriated funds? Some of those funding opportunities are actually on the street now. And that's really part of that $39 billion for manufacturing incentives. So if you're interested in learning more about those NOFOs, those notices of funding opportunities, you can go to our website at chips.gov to learn more. But really, when the architects for the CHIPS Act put it together, they recognize that we have here an historic opportunity to create a robust manufacturing and R&D ecosystem that will result in training, education, and good jobs, and strong communities. And so when we look for applications to the facilities and manufacturing, on this slide are some of the program priorities that CHIPS office has put forward. And so recognizing that groups that come together and put applications forward should be thinking about how to frame their proposals for economic and national security objectives, for commercial viability, for financial strength, for technical feasibility and readiness. I think that's something that all of you have in spades with your backgrounds. Another thing that you also have a strength in is understanding workforce development programs and how those work best. And then to also frame all of those around the broader impacts of how the proposals that you might put forward would really strengthen our goals for CHIPS for America. So I'm going to segue now into the R&D program of CHIPS, which I think many of you will be familiar with given just the backgrounds of many of you who I've met throughout the day and throughout yesterday. I typically like to think about the opportunities ahead of us. But really, in order to appreciate opportunities, it does help to think about and acknowledge our challenges. So some might say that the same trends that have shifted most of our semiconductor manufacturing away from the US have exposed vulnerabilities in US research and development, or that the US lacks the R&D infrastructure to support a robust manufacturing ecosystem. While we do have a few domestic facilities for prototyping, test, and preparing, there aren't enough. And competition, I think we all know for this, competition for technical experts in the broader tech community is significant. And so there are a few available candidates for chip manufacturing jobs today, and I think you probably see corollaries for that in the space industry. But those just serve to highlight the opportunities we have ahead of us, right? So we often say that building up a semiconductor manufacturing ecosystem is more than just about building fabs. It's also about keeping those opportunities here by pushing the next boundaries for research and development in the science and technology. So the sustained leadership in the semiconductor industry will be driving innovation across the US economy, strengthening every sector that relies on semiconductors, including technologies like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, space technologies. And so when we think about the CHIPS R&D programs, the Act specified the creation of 4 different types of programs focused on R&D. These programs listed here will share infrastructure, participants, and projects. They will work in coordination with each other, with other agencies as well, to help really shore up the R&D technologies of the future. And so listed here, they are the National Semiconductor Technology Center. I'll probably be referring this to NSTC throughout the talk, because it's a mouthful. But the NSTC is envisioned as an anchor, really a focal point for the CHIPS R&D program. We'll also have the National Advanced Packaging and Manufacturing Program. In order to really leapfrog ahead, US capacity has to be able to do advanced packaging, not just the packaging of today. And so being able to build pilot facilities that support advanced manufacturing, as I think many of you are thinking about, new ways to do manufacturing either here or in space, these will be opportunities that you can think about. Under the Manufacturing USA Institutes, for CHIPS R&D, we have the ability to fund up to 3 new institutes focused on the semiconductor space. And then under Metrology R&D, this is a program that will live at NIST, just acknowledging that metrology and measurement science is integral in the success of so many different types of sensitive technologies and electronics. And so our ability to really push the fields of metrology forward are going to support moving technologies forward for CHIPS. Now, if we take a snapshot of how far we've come since last August, we released a vision and strategy paper for the NSTC this past April. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go check it out. You can go to chips.gov and find it there. But under the CHIPS Act, the NSTC will be operated as a public-private consortium, much in the way that the community you have here brings parties together. And for the NSTC to stand it up, a new independent nonprofit entity will be formed. And so we're in the process of doing that right now. The Advanced Packaging Program is also being built right now, and we anticipate releasing a similar vision and strategy paper later this summer. And then late last year, we reached out to the scientific community. We put out an RFI, a request for information, to hear from the scientific community its thoughts on the opportunities that they saw and the directions that they thought the semiconductor manufacturing should head into. And that report was published earlier this spring. And then similarly, the Metrology Program published a gaps report to highlight priority areas for R&D in the spaces. So both those programs are also coming online later this year, and we're looking forward to being able to engage with the community scientifically, both within NIST and throughout the federal government and into the public and private sectors to move forward with R&D. Now, this slide is taken from the NSTC Vision and Strategy paper. So if you've read that paper, you may recognize the graphic. But here we've put down the NSTC mission. And the mission that we've put together has really been informed in response to extensive stakeholder input. The way we've written it, it's meant to be broad and inclusive, and it looks to the future. I know that for many of you who are veterans in the technology space, you've seen experiments that the government has done in the past around semiconductors. And so how is what we're doing today different? The way we've envisioned this is that the NSTC will help support technologies traverse that valley of death. I know that valley isn't specific to semiconductors. Many of you entrepreneurs in the audience experience this in your own technology and in your own small businesses. It's real everywhere. But in that valley, it is exceptionally costly and risky to prototype a device or a process and get it from idea to commercial stage. And so how do we continue to support innovation that way? So here's our vision. By the decade's end, the NSTC should be viewed throughout the world as an essential resource within the broad semiconductor ecosystem, with a network of respected scientists and engineers, state-of-the-art facilities, effective programs, and really demonstrated technical achievements. Congress appropriated these funds for the NSTC to support leadership in moving technology forward. And really, we have this once in a generation, and maybe once in my generation, opportunity to really create something transformative that we hope will endure for decades to come. And so when we think about the NSTC and compare it to other similar programs in the US and abroad, we think the NSTC is unique in both scale and breadth, but also in focus. And so for a national effort, the NSTC will not have a single location. That's not the way we see it. It'll have a headquarters where we do some really world-class science and technology R&D. But it will also leverage existing research facilities across the country, including national labs, funding expansion, improvement, and building novel facilities with advanced capabilities. We also see that in breadth, inventors and entrepreneurs, startups and established businesses, chip makers, material, chemical and equipment tool suppliers will all be invited, and more, will all be invited to collaborate under the NSTC programs. And with focus, the NSTC will focus on tangible research outcomes and rapid technology transfer that establishes, again, the US to be a leader in some of the most important semiconductor technologies of our future. So when we think about the goals stated here, really 3 high-level goals, which echo throughout all of the CHIPS R&D programs. One is to solidify undisputed technology leadership here to provide the foundation for future applications in industries. We want to be showing that we're conducting world-class research at the pre-competitive stage so that we can spur future innovation, future companies, future commercial products, and yielding technology and intellectual property that can be made available to all consortium participants under the NSTC as an example. Number 2, to be able to really significantly reduce the time and cost of moving an idea from design to commercialization, making semiconductor design capabilities accessible to all and for a wide range of stakeholders. We want those who have historically been unable to break into these spaces to now have access, because we believe that opportunity is around, and it's really just being able to access those resources where we want to continue fueling innovation and entrepreneurship. And 3, really being able to build and sustain a semiconductor workforce development program. We want to be able to serve through the NSTC as a coordination point and a resource across the federal government, for the government, industry, and educational institutions for semiconductor-related workforce. And so we're looking forward to these programs being really the highlight of the R&D program. And so when we think about the programs themselves, they're going to be focused on technology leadership, community assets, and the workforce, again. And so what does that mean for technology leadership? The NSTC providing leadership by providing a collaborative space where researchers can come together. That can be physical, that can be virtual. But really, we're looking to bring people together by funding research, by providing access to facilities, and very importantly, access to expertise. And really, that's all of you here, experts. We want to be able to manage the assets for the community. I think we all appreciate that resources are finite, and so being able to share the assets that we have are going to be so important. We anticipate the NSTC will be able to manage a variety of physical and digital assets that benefit the broader community through availability, lower cost, strong support for experimentation, and technical support. And again, when it comes to workforce programs, this is a top concern, not just for the semiconductor industry, but I know that for you too, you see this. Workforce is so important, and being able to address finding the best programs, best class programs, to support the semiconductor industry is something that we look forward to as well. So under technology leadership, we envision NSTC will be engaging with world-class experts across different industries, and I want to make that clear because there's room for all of us under CHIPS for America, but across industry, academia, national labs, and other government agencies to ensure that technical work meets the long-term needs of all the US microelectronics R&D ecosystem members, as well as the strategic and national and economic security imperatives that we have. When it comes to community assets, we envision being able to create a suite of these. There are programs that we're designing to provide resources in the pre-competitive space, again, in more of that lower TRL space, knowing that those are going to be the seeds of ideas that help move technologies forward, start building stronger technologies that will be more successful as they move out and get developed. One of the things we're also looking at is a digital enablement gateway, a secure cloud-based resource for shared circuit design and design software that could help smooth the path for commercialization of new products. We'll also be thinking about data sets. NIST's strength in data management can be leveraged to collect, aggregate, and share data sets, both for benchmarking at the R&D stage, for the development of new tools, for digital twins, and training AI models. Under patents, I think for those of you who are developing new IP, you understand this, the importance of IP, not just for patents, but for things like trade secrets. The NSTC will also develop rules and procedures that protect the ownership of any underlying IP for its members, including clear procedures and expectations on IP disclosure, licensing, and use, because we want to be able to protect small businesses and their ability to continue moving forward with technology, to take it from idea to commercial space. And technology centers for prototyping, research, and experimentation. I know that when we think about, at least what I've heard here at this conference, when we really expanded my definition of what it means to have a physical lab or a technical center, because now they don't have to be just on the ground. But the NSTC will consist of a headquarters and also a network of partner facilities that provide opportunities with both geographic distribution to leverage existing capabilities. Now, workforce program, again, this community here, you have a strong brand, I believe, with excellent public engagement, education, and workforce development programs, and we have a lot to learn from you. Under CHIPS, scientists, engineers, and technicians will be needed in ever-increasing numbers to staff the facilities built with CHIPS dollars. The NSTC's work goals are to conduct research to outreach to groups who are traditionally underrepresented in the scientific enterprise, to all to recruit, train, and retrain, to support scale-up of existing quality programs. And throughout this conference, I've had the pleasure of speaking with many of you to learn about the kinds of amazing programs that you have that work today, learning about how those can be pivoted or reused for the semiconductor space. And then, again, to develop novel approaches to training. So to achieve these goals, the NSTC should be able to collaborate with industry, educational institutions, our sister government agencies, and more, to create the kinds of training opportunities that we need to meet our industry's needs. And as I reflected on with some colleagues here today, the base of the science and the technology and the education that we can provide to students, to the workforce coming in, can be really translatable across different sectors. And so the opportunity, I think, that we can provide the incoming pipeline of workforce is going to be a benefit to those individuals, but also for us and the industries that we're looking to build. Now, the NSTC is going to be a public-private consortium, and we envision that everyone here will have a pathway to engage. And we expect that flexible membership will scale with types of organizations and types of industry sector. But really our goal and our vision for the NSTC is to make membership attractive and accessible to all parts of the community, including different kinds of companies, fabless companies, research institutions, community colleges, big companies, small companies, labor unions, investors, and more. And so through the CHIPS Act, NSTC will also establish an investment fund. And so this is a concept that I think many of you may be familiar with. I know we just had a panel yesterday with some venture capital folks. But the NSTC will also establish an investment fund. And while those details are still to be determined, that we imagine that we will be able to help startups, not just with traditional VC funding, but with wraparound services that support them in some of the most risky activities that are required to take so much hardware, as an example, from idea to commercial space. So I spent a lot of time talking about the NSTC, but if you want to learn more about it, I encourage you again to go online to chips.gov and read more. I'm going to sort of spend the rest of the time talking about the other 4 programs that we have under CHIPS R&D. And one that I think is going to be really interesting for this community is our National Advanced Packaging and Manufacturing Program. Our Advanced Manufacturing Program is going to be a program that funds and covers a broad range of technologies and taking those to commercial scale. So if we were to think about the NSTC as a platform, the packaging program could be thought of as the funding program. Advanced packaging is the current state of the art today, but the US has little or no capacity for advanced packaging here at present. And so it's really cost prohibitive to bring those technologies and processes here. So what we want to do is leapfrog to the next generation of packaging, to advanced packaging. And the ability to do that is going to require not just an all of government effort, but all of community effort. And so when I look around here at the ISS conference, meeting with so many of you who have different ideas about what packaging materials means, I'm very encouraged. And so what do some of those pilot packaging facilities look like? the advanced packaging program will work in partnership with the NSTC to support packaging facilities for R&D efforts. We'll be prototyping and piloting integration components fabricated at the NSTC to packaging centers or other third parties. We'll be having facilities that have sufficient tool redundancy so that entrepreneurs and innovators can mess around, experiment with tools, while continuing to provide baseline opportunities for packaging to happen in the background. And then partnerships with domestic OSATs and other electronics manufacturing services to facilitate helping to move those prototypes into a production scale space. The NIST metrology program, I only have one slide here, but it's another key program that NIST will be owning. It's the NIST metrology program. And so I think many of you probably understand that metrology science plays a key role in science, being able to measure. But specifically, it can be a major role in up to like half of all semiconductor manufacturing steps. And so metrology is really needed at all stages of Semiconductor Technology Center for the chips that we're developing today, but also for the ones that we're developing tomorrow. And so NIST has been working really hard to build a new program for this, and it's one that is, we're looking forward to providing more info later this fall. The last program that I want to highlight is the Manufacturing USA Institutes. There is an existing network of institutes here in the US focused on helping to translate processes for manufacturing to support small businesses, big businesses, technologies moving from idea to commercial space. So the Manufacturing USA network is regional institutes that convene businesses, academia, and other stakeholders to really test applications for new technologies. NIST currently has 17 institutes that it oversees that serve a variety of sectors, from biopharma to biomanufacturing to composites and digital manufacturing. And under CHIPS and Science Act, we look forward to funding 1 up to 3 different Manufacturing USA institutes for the semiconductor space. And I mentioned earlier that we engaged the community earlier to find out their thoughts on the direction we should move in for Manufacturing USA. And the reports came back earlier. Interesting, what we learned is that there really was no consensus from the community on any specific topics that we should focus a new institute or institutes on. There was no consensus on whether we should have 1 or more institutes. But where we did hear some consensus was on governance and structure. The existing Manufacturing USA one is a strong one with leadership, but more funding is needed to support the operation costs in these spaces, not just for semiconductors or space, but for other manufacturing endeavors. We acknowledge that there's also a need for coordination across, and it's not just coordination across federal governments, it's a coordination across networks and communities. And then sustainability, consensus that, that institutes will likely need catalytic federal funding, and that's a theme I heard yesterday and last night as well, catalytic federal funding. But because of the return on investments and the funding timelines are so long, being able to count on an influx of federal funding to support these kinds of activities is really critical. But some of the ideas that are floating around include some cross-cutting technology topics such as productivity enhancement with early design or co-design, smart manufacturing and automation, new and advanced materials, metrology and testing, and then others have come up with interesting ideas for focused institute topics such as substrate manufacturing for advanced packaging. I think I heard a little bit of that last night at the networking session. Sensors and MEMS systems, and infrastructure to really help support technology transition and transfer into the manufacturing space. So really in closing, this is my last slide, this is really just the beginning. I shared a lot of what we've been spending the last year doing together out in DC and really beyond. But we're excited about the work that we have ahead of us, and we look forward to hearing more from you as we execute on this ambitious program together. So with that, I will close, and I look forward to having some Q&A with you. Thank you.
Dr. Canaria, I'm standing back here in the back of the room. This is the time for Q&A, so I will encourage anybody to use the app to submit questions. We already have questions on our Q&A section. First, I want to personally thank you for taking the time to come here and for bringing NIST and CHIPS as well to this community. This is on behalf of our community. But we have a lot of questions, so let me just get started. First, so we have a lot of data analysis in microgravity semiconductor R&D that shows that the microgravity environment can produce superior materials from those on Earth. So can you speak about the Institute's thoughts on including microgravity R&D written down in your future programs?
That's a great question. And I want to use the response that the future is not yet written, and we haven't released those funding opportunities yet. But those are absolutely the kinds of ideas that we look forward to entertaining and hearing from the community about. And so I don't want to close any doors. We're really looking for the community to tell us where they think the technology can move next. So I would absolutely just keep that open. I would also keep some thoughtfulness for how do we scale manufacturing and how do we continue to support innovative and next generation technologies.
That's exactly a follow-up to that was the next questions. Like, what are the possibilities do you see for semiconductor R&D and manufacturing space?
Yeah, so one of the nice things about the R&D program is we're building it now. And so the opportunities are going to be big, $11 billion on order big for R&D, $39 billion for facilities. But when we think about opportunities, there's going to be the NSTC, which itself will be an independent entity. It'll be a consortium of private and public parties coming together. The Department of Commerce and NIST will be funding the NSTC, but the NSTC itself as an entity will be putting out many, many funding opportunities for researchers to engage and propose excellent science.
Regarding the NSTC, how can this community get involved in the formation of the NSTC?
So right now, the NSTC is being born right now. It's going to be a new independent entity, and right now they are picking the first board of directors to run the NSTC, and we expect that, and we anticipate the NSTC will be formed later this fall. The way that this community can get involved is to sign up to be members, engage with us, be part of the community. And I know I spoke a lot about semiconductor technology, but I also want to recognize that semiconductor technology hits and touches a lot of other industries and verticals. And so everyone here, I think, is most definitely a potential member to the NSTC. So when it comes time and the NSTC opens its doors, I hope you'll come and walk through and join us.
Thank you very much. You spoke quite a bit about workforce development, and we are all very aware how important this is as well. So what are your thoughts around the vision of supporting workforce development, and have you identified a plan or strategic partners?
Yeah, so workforce means different things to different people. Even across Chips for America, we see that workforce to build and construct new fab facilities can look very different from the workforce for the scientists who work at the bench in those facilities. But we also recognize that workforce is an issue not unique to the chips or semiconductor space. And so, as one of my colleagues from the National Science Foundation likes to say, we think about workforce from K through gray. And it's because there is a lifelong opportunity for bringing individuals into new spaces, into new verticals, like the semiconductor space. And so really taking a broad, holistic approach, understanding that the pipeline is longer than we maybe traditionally think of it, and that there are opportunities to bring people into the pipeline from one end or laterally into the pipeline. And so we're really thinking about the NSTC, the National Semiconductor Technology Center, having its own center of excellence focused on workforce that will really be catering to all of Chips for America.
Thank you so much. Oh, can't see without my glasses. And we are all awaiting the next notice of funding opportunity. Do you have any insights as to when that should be announced?
So the third fab facility, NOFO, should be coming soon. I would just recommend chips.gov as your one-stop shop. You can also sign up for our newsletter to learn more about those opportunities coming forth. I want to say that the R&D opportunities will be coming online soon. And so the advanced packaging program, as an example, will be one where the CHIPS R&D program is putting out solicitations for the R&D community to respond to. Other programs like NIST metrology will focus internally for research happening at NIST, but others like NSTC and the advanced packaging will focus on the scientific community.
Very good. Here we have another question. Another question is, how similar is CHIPS for America to the Sematech consortium of the 1980s?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. And if I can share a little story, I don't know how many of you use ChatGPT just for fun. I asked ChatGPT to tell me the Sematech story as a children's bedtime story. And it gave me a really great story, which I will try to recap and just leave open the door for opportunity, right? So with Sematech, we learned a lot, right? There is high risk, high reward in these types of programs. In a program like Sematech, where we put a lot of money in, we put down a focus. The risk was high. I think what we learned is that we have opportunities today because the climate today is different. We have an opportunity to focus on different sectors of the industry, different verticals. Semiconductor space today is very different than it was years ago. It really touches today all sectors of current public life. And so the opportunities are also huge here. And so when we think about CHIPS for America, it's not just focusing on specific or we're not limiting ourselves in the scope of what we're trying to fund. We're trying to think more broadly, and we're trying to think more strategically. And so we're hopeful that we'll be able to bring in partners across the scientific enterprise to help us with that. And so I didn't really get to the ChatGPT story, but it left the story that ChatGPT gave me left a door open for a new chapter to be written. And I think that's where CHIPS R&D and CHIPS for America comes in.
So I think we have time for one more question, so I apologize for other members, but this is the question. Do you anticipate funding R&D and facilities for semiconductor needs for the biotech industry, such as Illumina and PacBio? And that's your friend, you know who?
Thank you, wherever you are. One of the things that we really recognize is that the semiconductor industry is going to touch other industries. And so in our vision for success for CHIPS for America in 25, 30 years from now, yes, we look forward to those industries touching automation, med tech, biotech, environmental tech, clean tech. And so where there are opportunities where the research community comes to us with ideas, we will be open to those. And so I want to say that the answer there is yes. But we'll have to see what you all bring to the table in terms of ideas and proposals. All right. Well, with that, I want to thank you again for this opportunity. It's been really great for me to learn more about what you're working on, what your interests are, where ours overlap, and just to hear more about the opportunity to work closer together moving forward. So thank you very much.